This is Taya reporting for the Real News Network in Baltimore City, Maryland. For years, policing has been considered the solution to all of Baltimore's problems. But today, we spoke to a key official who says it's time for a change. Taking money from policing to fund social programs has long been a policy change advocated by some members of the Baltimore City Council. But until now, there weren't enough votes to make it happen. But last week, the council voted unanimously to cut $2 million from the $497 million police budget on top of cuts already made by the mayor. And while some of the money was restored, it marked a first in the history of a city that has done little to curb its appetite for law enforcement. But the debate over de-emphasizing policing occurs as the city is facing another historically high year of violence. Last night, 6 people were murdered, putting the city on a record pace for homicide. And even as the city puts officers on 12-hour shifts, missing from the dialogue is the continuing impact of entrenched poverty and social isolation that afflicts the city. Which is why we sat down with City Council President Jack Young, who has advocated for this change in funding priorities for over a decade, and to explore how the city transitions from less policing during a crisis of ongoing crime, and what can be done to give community more control over a department that soaks up more money than any other agency.
Policing, when you said we're spending all this money on policing, but we're really getting value for what we're investing in policing.
I said that because I believe in being proactive. I believe if we put more money into preventive programs for our young people, our youth, in terms of recreation, after-school programs, and entrepreneurship for our young people, because to be honest with you, most of them are great entrepreneurs. You know, you see them running their little drug markets. Hey, let's channel that energy into something positive. Maybe you can run a company selling your own line of shirts, your own line of clothing. So I want to look at how we can change that dynamic from giving more money to the police department and giving it to productive, programs for our youth. Because we can't police our way out of this. We have to think outside of the box and come up with some creative ways of thinking to get these young people in the programs and show them that there's hope. Because right now they think there's no hope.
Had a couple years of record violence. What do you think is driving the violence right now? From your perspective, the person who talks to people, not just from what the police talk.
Drugs and beefs. You disrespect me. Or you took you robbed my guy, from his drugs. And a lot of it stems from, you messing with my lady. So it's a whole host of factors that's driving the murder rate. But if you look at the murder rate and what's happening, it's targeted. It's like premeditated. Like, I'm going to go out and kill Steve tonight because he done set up shop in my area where I control, So I think that's what's fueling all these killings. And I don't think we can police our way out of it. We need the whole community to come up and say, hey, enough is enough. We can't police our way out of this. We as a community going to take charge of this. We're going to start talking to our sons and daughters about the effects that you're having on the city of Baltimore economically as well as socially, because people don't want to come here because they think we're a deadly city. But I always ask the question, why isn't there murders, drug-related murders in Guilford, Roland Park, Canton, and all these affluent areas? They just mostly in African-American communities. Blacks killing blacks. And I have a problem with that. But I cannot hold the police department accountable for targeted murders. We as a community have to step up to the plate, and when we see things and know things, we have to report it. Then people say, well, if I report it, there's no protection for me or my family. I had a conversation with a couple of my friends offline, some judges, and said, why can't we have people to testify like they do in federal court without anybody knowing who they are? They say because the defendant have a right to know who their accusers are. I think that's the worst thing that you could ever do. I think we need to protect people because we can't protect them. We can't protect their family. And I think that we should find, our federal government should find a way to be creative to let these folks who want to testify, who have seen murders, do it anonymously. That's the only way we're going to solve the murder rate in the city of Baltimore. We have to make sure that witnesses are protected and that their families are protected. People want to come forward, but they're worried about, hey, am I going to be the next one killed? Or are they going to kill my mother, my sister, my brother because I snitched? The stop snitching culture have to stop in the city of Baltimore. You know, a whole generation of young black men and women are being wiped off the face of the earth. It's worse than anything in Vietnam or anything in these foreign countries, Afghanistan, Iraq. The murder rate in here in Baltimore is unacceptable. And they say, well, elected officials not speaking out. I speak out all the time about it. Because I know that if the community come together, if the grandmas, the grandfathers, the aunts and uncles, the mothers start talking to their children, telling them to put down the gun, there's a better way to solve our differences.
You had a Justice Department report that said the police department systemically practiced strategies that were targeting African Americans illegally. You had this gun trace task force that was going around robbing innocent people, all African American. We've talked to people who've been locked up illegally. The city does nothing for them. I mean, isn't the police department part of the problem? I mean, if you look at all those things.
I can't say the police department is responsible for the murders. I'm not going to let you tell me that. Okay. You know, whether they, you know, have done some illegal things, to Commissioner Davis' credit, he's been going after the cops who are dirty, and even some of the police who don't want to be in that environment. We have a lot of honest, hardworking men and women in the police department that don't want to be a part of that little small portion of the police department that's doing things illegally. But they're just like we are. They're afraid too. What if I'm in a gun battle and I just told on somebody and his friend and he's my partner and know that I'm the one that told on him? Is he going to watch my back to keep me from getting gunned down?
So you think that people, the dirty part of the police department will actually let people die in the police department? Like they're that dirty?
I didn't say that. Okay, remember the guy who had the police officer had the red on his car? I'm just using those kind of things as an example. I'm not saying that they will actually do that, but that's running in the mind of these officers, just like it's running in the mind of myself. You know, people know that people call my office about drugs and stuff. I've been threatened more than once throughout the years, okay?
What kind of threats?
All kinds of threats. We won't get you. I mean, they knocked on my door. You remember the story with Jay Miller, tried to say that I was never threatened? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And Major Shari called me because at the time Bill Feld said he had no record of that. And Shari said, well, get him to call me. I remember the day that it happened. I remember I'm telling you, we're going to put a police car in front of your door, and you told me no. I want that patrol car patrolling the community, not sitting in front of my door, because I'm not afraid.
You get threats from drug dealers?
I have gotten threats from them, you know.
It's because you've been reported.
That was a while back. We all get threatened, you know, not just me. You know, if drug dealers know a certain person is disrupting their business, you know, they're going to come after you because they feel as though you cutting off my income, you know. But my thing is, you don't have to kill people over drugs, okay? You can have conflict resolution, but you can sit down and talk it over. Hey man, look, I'm sorry man, I took your stash, but look, I'm gonna make it up to you, you know? That kind of stuff. Because when you kill somebody, it affects a whole family, you know? And the thing is, they have to think, what if I get killed? What effect would it have on my mother and my family? You know, they'll be devastated. So we need to find another route, maybe called a summit, between the warring fractions and setting them down and say, hey guys, you know, you don't have to do all these murders. Not that I'm condoning drug dealing, but to stem the killings, I'm willing to sit down with the warring fractions and say, hey guys, put down the guns, settle your dispute some other kind of way. Because we're not going to stop them from selling drugs. I don't care what we do, we're not going to stop it. The only way we're going to stop it if we do something about the failed war on drugs. There's a failed war on drugs. Now, people said during Prohibition, right? We can't legalize alcohol because everybody's going to be a drunk, right? Mm-hmm. So my whole take is, and I got some backlash for this a while back. I don't know if you remember, I had a hearing on legalizing the drugs, right? Mm-hmm. Or decriminalizing the drugs. So that people, because we have to look at it from a health perspective, not from a criminal perspective, but a health perspective for the people who are using. We don't need to be locking up users, filling up the jails. We need to be giving them treatment, right? So if we put treatment centers in place within the hospitals, not in the communities, in these hospitals where they can go and get their treatment, just like they do methadone, which is another drug. They can go get their treatment. We drive down the demand for drugs, which will stop the killings, not only in the city of Baltimore, all over. Drugs is not only in the black community, it's in the white community too now, because now they're trying to do something about it, because young white kids are now using drugs at an alarming rate.
Why aren't there any drug dealers in Roland Park and Homeland?
They won't tolerate it. We tolerate it in black communities. They will not tolerate it. And that's what I'm trying to say. Our communities shouldn't tolerate it either. If you look at Baltimore and take the drug piece out with the killings, we have a beautiful city, a thriving city, but we have a problem with drugs and murders. Take that away, we're one of the safest cities in America.
Missing from the dialogue is the continuing impact of entrenched poverty and social isolation that afflicts the city.